Hello and a warm welcome to the Cybersecurity webinar brought to you by Picus Security. My name is Simon, I'm part of the Picus team and also the host of today's session. Before we formally kick off, there's just a little bit of housekeeping that I need to cover off. So please be advised that we're using the Goldcast virtual events platform to host and also record today's session. If you're unfamiliar with Goldcast, on the right-hand side of your screen, there are various options. There's a Q&A where you can submit questions to me and today's panelists throughout today's session. There's also an option to respond to a few of the polls that we have lined up for you today. And there's also a media section where you can download some of the resources to take away and read after the event. Overall, we're expecting the session to last in the region of 45 minutes, but we do have a little bit of extra time at the end for your questions. So please feel free to submit those throughout, and we'll address those either as we go or right at the end. On that note, I suggest we get started. So welcome everybody to this cybersecurity webinar, Maximizing Cybersecurity with GenAI. Today's webinar is a discussion about the use of machine learning and generative AI across cybersecurity. The role of AI in cyber is undoubtedly a hot topic in the industry right at this moment, as indeed it is across many other industry sectors. And with RSA a matter of days away, it's sure to be another talking point at this year's event. In today's webinar, we'll explore the current and future use of AI in security. We'll discuss how it's currently being used and share strategies to help increase its adoption across your security operations. We'll also debate some of the concerns about the use of the technology and examine sort of the fundamental question, will AI in security ever replace practitioners? During part of the session, we'll also focus specifically on the use of AI in security validation, which is a topic really close to our hearts here at Picus Security, particularly given the recent release of Numi AI, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. Joining me to discuss all these topics and a lot more, I'm delighted to be joined firstly by Nodoan Juku, Blue Team Director at Picus Security. Nodoan, great to have you with us.
Oh, hi everyone.
Also Etugrul Yaprak, Data Team Lead at Picus. Hi Etugrul.
Hello everybody.
And last but not least, Oliver Rochford, industry strategist, and also author of the cybersecurity newsletter, The Curious AI on LinkedIn. Great to have you with us, Oliver.
Hey, hello everyone.
So Oliver, as a security strategist, I'm quite keen to start the conversation by getting your perspective on how you assess the current use of AI in cybersecurity. Is it living up to the hype, or is it really still in its infancy?
No, I think it's fair to say, like, there's this great quote by the author William Gibson who says that the future's already here, it's just unevenly distributed. And that's probably a good way of looking at AI and automation in security, right? We have some areas, if I think of detection, where actually we're very mature. Other areas like generating reports using LLMs. I don't know if you just saw like the report from Google and what you guys are doing as well. That's solved, right? On the other hand, automating decision, probably still further into the future. We're not quite there yet. So I think it's a mixed bag, and that's probably what makes it so challenging for users to evaluate. It depends on what problem you're trying to solve. You don't have the same level of sophistication everywhere yet.
Another one. Oliver there was talking about AI being used across different aspects of security operations, but in different levels of maturity. maybe you could describe to us how AI is currently being used and the impact it is having.
Yes, of course, Simon. In fact, before the Gen AI hype, non-generative ML techniques were widely used in cybersecurity technologies and research. We saw, and we are seeing now, actually very successful examples of these. For example, such technologies and products like SIEM, EDR, and behavior analytics solutions, and they are already used in the field successfully because the machine learning is already very successful at tracking and detecting patterns, right? So ML techniques are very useful for these technologies to detect abnormal or suspicious activities. And on the other hand, especially after GenAI hype, it started to affect the daily lives of cybersecurity experts. For example, extracting quick actions such as mitigation items from many pages of security reports, technical blog posts. And another example is quickly understanding while they are analyzing threat alerts, tracing the alerts, and understanding the rule, what does it mean, and understanding the threat easily with using Gen AI's summarize and context functions successfully. So at that point, I think the main outcome is focusing on the most important tasks with reducing manual workforce here. Now, we are not here yet, as imagined by many people, but we are starting to get desired value. By harnessing the power of AI and AI-driven technologies, I think organizations can strengthen their security posture and improve their instant response capabilities and processes, and can stay ahead some of the most sophisticated attacks, I think.
So I think what you're describing there is that it's not necessarily practical to use AI across every aspect of security operations, but really to pick and choose where it can have the most impact.
Definitely.
And I think that leads well into the poll question that we have lined up for today's audience. So I'm going to open the poll now. And what we'd like to know is, are you currently using GenAI to support your security operations in any of the following areas? So you can see a few options on your screen, and they kind of range from alert enrichment to cyber threat intelligence, detection engineering, and also incident triage and reporting as well. So we'll give the audience just a few more moments to make their choices there. Etugru, is there anything you'd want to add to Nerdawan and Oliver's sort of opening comments about the role of AI?
Actually, I want to focus on the speed and scalability of the data, because cyber attacks spread rapidly, very rapidly, and can target thousands and millions of endpoints. So you are strong as long as you can resist or answer these threats in real time or near real time. AI will be the power here to handle these speed and scalability concerns, I think, with the ability of analyzing vast amount of data.
Yeah, I think it's also worth mentioning that, like, in addition to like using AI when you need it, use the right AI. There's a fantastic research paper from Gartner came out this year called "When Not to Use Generative AI," and there's this matrix on it which shows you which AI technique matches which use case. And what you see is that for prediction, for automation, for decision intelligence, LLM is the worst AI approach you can use. Simulation is actually much better. And so knowing that we've used AI for a long time in the industry, that it's a whole field, a whole branch of thinking, data science, and that there's different ways you can solve different problems, I think is really important, because LLMs are great, like they're really cool, don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of the tech, but they are not the most cost-effective way to analyze events, for example, you know. There are cheaper ways to do that at scale, yeah.
I've just closed the poll, so let's just have a quick look at the results, and I'll share those on the screen now. So as a reminder, we asked, are you currently using GenAI to support your security operations in any of the following areas? I think by far the most popular is the use of AI in cyber threat intelligence, closely followed by detection engineering. What is your reaction to those findings, Jens? Does that come as a surprise or not?
So I have to say not really. I think the detection engineering one is one which I've seen in other areas, because of course, if you think of it as a development tool, something which helps you write code and analyze code, something which helps you to basically do a lot of data transformation and parsing, it's a fantastic tool. Cyber threat intelligence, I think, is really, really interesting, because that to me is the critical use case, the ability of like an LLM to be able to actually analyze data, right, and extract what you need from it. So I think that's an awesome automation example where the ability to parse natural language has really solved something which is going to be hard to do if you try to do this with rules or regular expressions, you know.
We see this a lot at Picus, don't we, Nerdowan? Security teams do struggle to operationalize cyber threat intelligence because there's so much out there. How do you aggregate it and prioritize it and take actions from it?
Yeah, it's a common issue globally, right? And we are talking and discussing this in many years. And so, as Oliver said, actually CTI is a good providing us a good opportunity to use Gen AI's advantages there to extract into data and make the context and prioritization and make CTI too actionable for the companies and focusing on the most important threats and threat data. So, yeah.
Yeah, and the one which surprised me on the other side was reporting, because I use so my newsletter is basically written using AI. I use it to summarize news articles, and I also use it to basically, based on bullet points, to create text. And I've seen other actual vendors implement reporting templates using a small language model, because if you control the data that goes into it, you're going to limit hallucinating. So it's actually a really strong use case. I'd say, like, consider looking at it, because it can yield very good results. Google just published a paper of how they're using it internally just this week to do exactly that, to do report generation. So revisit that use case if you're not already doing it. I think writing reports is almost the least valuable thing you could do with your time in a SOC.
We focused the opening part of the discussion on how defenders are using AI, but it's also true, isn't it, that attackers are leveraging this? We hear about this more and more in the news. How concerned should we be, Oliver, about adversaries starting to adopt AI to develop AI-based attacks?
No, it's an interesting question, because, of course, if you read the news, it seems as though adversarial AI is imminent. I think it's a more nuanced picture. Like right now, the real world examples we're seeing is basically threat actors using it to do data analysis and also to create more convincing phishing text. Makes sense if you're sat in a country where, you know, your targets aren't have a language that's not your first language. This is going to make you sound a lot more compelling. And it's also going to allow you to tailor and customize messages far more quicker than it would before. But if you think about it, that's just fraud. That's social engineering. I wouldn't call that technical hacking. Then there was a report just last week or the week before about a research group apparently using GPT-4 to automate exploitation. But I also saw an article where somebody already debunked it, because they didn't really share any details, any of the prompts, any of the code. And more importantly, the few examples that we did show, there were public exploits available. So it's kind of questionable how much work GPT actually did in that example. My own experience is that using it for that kind of task, as we mentioned, like if it's the wrong type of approach, but if you do use it, it's like having a million monkeys trying to type Shakespeare. One of them might get something, but the rest won't. And so I don't think it scales. At the same time, it's going to come. Let's be honest, attackers are going to start utilizing this. They are early adopters. They have a different set of constraints. They don't have so many policies in place. At the same time, I don't think it's going to be like, it's not going to be that all of a sudden you're going to have this amazing attack, because attackers are also lazy. They only need to be a little bit better than you. That's why we have an incremental arms race. I'm also not sure if outside of a nation state or corporate environment, people really have the resources to develop this. There's lots of articles coming out about small startups are dying just trying to spend the compute cost. You know, the new NVIDIA graphics card costs $40,000. I think there's a limit to what we're going to see normal criminals do this. It's going to take a while until it filters down to them. But evil GPT is out there, right? So the same kind of help you're getting in terms of detection engineering, they're getting in terms of attack engineering, the same kind of help you're getting in terms of actually being able to pass better messages and pass data better, they're also having. But I wouldn't invest money in defending against this yet, because for the most part, a lot of your existing policies should already cover you, right? Sending data to GPT has got nothing to do with AI. That's shadow IT. It's basically sending your data to a cloud provider, and that's why you should probably be using the LLM, which is built into your security solution, like Picus, because that way you don't have to take your data out and give it to another third party. It stays with the people who already have your data. So it's a simple fix for that, right? And if you think of prompt injection, it's more sophisticated than injection, but hey, we've been doing injection attack since day one. Fuzzer, SQL. So I think some of it isn't as new as people necessarily think it is, and you'd be surprised at how much coverage you already actually have in place. If you have good cyber hygiene, if you have a good zero trust model, LLM attacks aren't going to harm you. Lastly, I think they're going to be noisy. They're not going to be stealthy, are they? I mean, they're basically doing trial and error, brute force. I don't think they're going to be difficult to detect. They will go basically after the weak of the herd initially, people who, for whatever reason, aren't well protected in the moment, you know? Yeah.
What's your perspective, Nurdolan?
Actually, yeah. As Oliver said, the asynchronous way is still going. You know, adversaries still and will be always the early adapters of the new developments. So, in the scope of these sophisticated attack techniques, attackers are using AI to automate and enhance various stages of the attack lifecycle. So, scale and complexity of the threat landscape always increase. And at the same time, SOC teams are still having hard times to adapt new technologies and the infrastructures like the cloud-based systems. So, but finally, yes, automated threat detection and response technologies and CTI and predictive solutions can be helpful there. But I think the main approach should be designing an adaptive defense people and posture at the same time. What I really want to say that by saying this, it's necessary to dynamically adapt people, process, and technologies to these new developments in the AI world. For example, I continuously learning from security validation findings, like Picus provide security instant data, threat intelligence feeds, AI-driven systems can adapt their algorithm to response to counter emerging threats effectively, and the adaptive approach, I think, is one of the most important thing is waiting for us.
So I think what you're saying there is that AI is important, but it's also important to have the foundations, the people, the process in place, and AI is really used to support that and scale and improve the speed and efficiency, which I think is what Edward was talking about.
You know the 6 stages of autonomous driving. I always think it's a really useful model to think about AI. So what would the stages be towards an autonomous attack? And of course, if you think about it, there's this model where you basically have like a GPT being hosted on a server, and it's got a bunch of connectors and it's trying to hack you, right? And I think that's probably a very weak model, because think of how easy it would be to block and to detect. Then you have this model of like the AI creates a malware. And I like that, because if you think of the way they're using machine learning in the moment to generate new chemicals or new medications, because they are basically just synthesizing modeling this kind of stuff. And you could basically see an AI model generating malware code, but the AI being the malware and basically like autonomously traveling across the internet, I don't even know how that would work. That's sci-fi, right? If you think of how TCP/IP works, it's very hard to envision that. But I think we're very much still at stage one. That's what I'm saying. And we have many intermediate stages to hit first. But I think the first time that you see AI created malware, you recognize it because it's going to look like nothing that a human has written. It'll be strange. Yeah.
One of the key benefits of AI that we've spoken about so far is its ability to help spot patterns that perhaps humans cannot. I'm going to share a slide now. It's some recent findings from the Picus Red report, which was an annual study of, in this case, over 600,000 malware samples. And one of the key findings of the report is really what it highlights is the extent to which malware is becoming more sophisticated and evasive. So 70% of malware now was seen to employ stealth-oriented techniques. And 25% of samples could impair security controls. Now, we're not necessarily suggesting that all the malware was capable of leveraging AI, but we see an increase in terms of the sophistication attacks and the ability of malware to live off the land, to hide in legitimate system processes, and really make it more challenging for detection teams. Ertuğrul, question for you. How can AI be used to help detect these sorts of silent and stealthy threats, like the types of malware identified by this year's Red Report?
Actually, it's again coming to the analyzing of data in AI scope. In this case, especially analyzing vast amount of data nearly in real time and enabling detection of patterns, anomalies, abnormal patterns. This may indicate a potential threat, I think, and we can make use of AI, make benefit of AI at this scope. And also behavioral change, such as network traffic or system performance, system logs, user activities can be beneficial at that point. I think a generative AI can be very helpful, especially when we talk about NLP and text-based data, especially emails or chat conversations. We can make use of AI here to detect subtle hints of indications, maybe inside these threats. These are the points I think we can focus on, especially detecting silent and stealthy threats.
Would you agree with that, Oliver?
Yeah, I mean this ability to basically look at data across lots of multiple dimensions, I think, is the big thing that generally AI and all of the supporting technologies bring to the table. Because my favorite example is, as you mentioned, right? We have this sophistication in malware, and I always look at living off the land because that is, to me, what stresses traditional detection. Because rather than having an indicator of compromise, like something like an IP address, which is known bad, you have PowerShell. And what matters is who, where, what, why, right? That's what makes it incredibly difficult. It's difficult to differentiate that from legitimate traffic. But once you can start looking at lots of different factors and dimensions, and you can basically look at these simultaneously, which is something which is really hard to do with an if, else, and, or kind of rule logic, right? You're very limited with that. Moreoverly, is that like there's this thing called the curse of dimensionality, where is that if you try to model something, there's a point where you cannot mathematically compute it anymore. AI can, vector databases can, like all of these new deep learning are able to not just help us to analyze it. The bigger problem is being able to actually turn it into a way that it can be analyzed. And that's what's held us back more or less as well. It's not just on one end where the problems have been, even looking at data at scale and getting it into a form where we can analyze it at scale is something which AI is going to help. So I think these are the big things which are a little bit harder for a security person to actually, I would say, get their head around, because what I'm interested in is if I search or if I want to see something, I'm interested in the security output. But be aware of the fact that this new technological innovation just means that we can look at data across many more different variables, if you want, attributes, characteristics, so that you can do very precise identification. Then you add something like a knowledge graph into the mix, which allows you to then also basically put some structure around your data, basically you can start forming relationships, and you have a very powerful combination. And attacks getting more stealthy, that's exactly what we need to be able to do. We need to be able to look at the attack in its entirety, not just at a snapshot in time. And you're going to need AI to do that, exceedingly,
Nerda1, we know about the challenges of detection, and we constantly hear from blue teams about how much work is involved in running security operations day to day and staying on top of threats. How excited are you about the potential for AI to really help ease the load in this area as well?
Yeah, it's a global issue. As when you ask anyone, they can say the same thing. The workload is very high at SOC teams, at blue teams, all the cybersecurity domain. They can hear that easily. And as a cybersecurity professional, I'm really incredibly excited the potential of AI to mitigate this workload of blue teams and enhance the efficiency of their security operations. The daily life of SOC teams in particular are filled with many difficulties, many challenges, and many struggles. And in fact, many people think of almost the same difficulties, such as you can easily hear that alert fatigue, complexity of defense layers, finding detection gaps, and the misconfigurations. When you focus on the right problem with the right AI technique, it will be possible to overcome many of these challenges. For example, SOC teams spent weeks of effort on routine challenges such as finding detection posture gaps, determining which rule is covering what, which threat, which technique, what are the misconfigurations in my rules or SIEM environment, and the failures in my detection runtime. So, for example, with Picus platforms, detection engineering solution, and ML-based functions at DRV, they can detect these misconfigurations, these coverage gaps within minutes. It's amazing, right? So with GenAI, it will be even more possible to make the repetitive and I can say that the boring tasks for the cybersecurity professionals and making their life faster. And Gen AI will improve the processes by quickly feeding decision-making points on alert triaging process maybe. So Gen AI and AI techniques will provide cybersecurity domain to reduce their manual workloads, and it's from now on it's already exciting.
Oliver, you've spoken previously about the concept of the ergonomic workflow, and I think that expands a little bit on some of the points Nerda1 was making there about sort of automating the most impactful aspects or the most painful for SOC teams. What can you tell us about ergonomic workflow?
So ergonomics, it's a concept from health and safety and well-being, right? So basically a well-designed work process has the least amount of impact on you negatively, whether physically or in our case, cognitively. So when we talk about alert fatigue, it's because the cognitive load is causing you a lot of stress. And my favorite example is context switching. When you leave a room and you forgot what you were going to do, it's because our memory actually attaches to context. And every time you click a tab, you have to jump from one solution into another. You have to look something up. You're essentially coming out of that zone, and it costs you time and it costs you energy and sugar to basically recover again. Now, if you think of that, when we look at automation or AI, a bad way of automating is taking all of the stuff which is cognitively engaging and leaving you with the stuff that isn't. So we're going to have to learn to design human-machine teaming processes which help to not just automate stuff away, but actually automates the stuff which makes the human the most effective and the most efficient. I think that's the interesting thing. And up until now, most processes, I don't know, an alert comes in, an automated process kicks off, hands over to you, and that's it. But if you think of it, there should normally be a little bit more in tandem. There should be stuff happening in parallel to make my life easier. If I start searching for something, I'd like something which says, okay, if he's gathering that information about the IP address, generally this information is also useful. And I think this, people talk about a co-pilot. I don't want a co-pilot. I want a navigator or a gunner. I want someone who does something, but I'm not doing. That basically turns me into a force multiplier, not someone who replicates what I'm doing or jumps in when I'm tired. I don't think that's going to help us, But ergonomics workflows, to me, in AI sense, means that we're going to have to learn to build very good APIs between the human and the machine, so that this doesn't just turn into a burnout factor,
Yeah, cognitive burnout it's a massive issue across security, isn't it? Picus, we did some more research, and in our Blue report, we sort of examined a lot of the trade-offs that security teams have to make on a daily basis. We know across security there's so much to do, and this creates real dilemmas and overload for security teams that really struggle to know where to focus their impacts, to have the most effort. And in many organizations, we found that organizations face trade-offs around knowing what to prevent versus knowing what to detect, which vulnerabilities to patch, what threats to log an alert on. So many decisions to be made. Is this an area where you kind of see AI helping to really help streamline decision making and focus teams sort of in the right areas?
I mean, decision support, I think, is probably a good way of looking at this. Like we say threat actors have command and control, why don't we? But more importantly, I think for us, we have to make a lot of decisions, possibly within a short time frame, with very little information. Anything which can help us to make better informed decisions is going to make our job easier. And it will leverage the best of both sides, right? Machines focus on crunching large numbers of data. We focus on analyzing meaning and context. And I think that's the way that we're going to solve this problem, if we're going to solve it at all. Yeah. So AI is going to have a huge role to play in this, because the self-learning capability, I think that's something which we're going to need increasingly. And also the knowledge transfer capability without us having to codify this manually. Right? That's where has been always a problem. We spend so much time writing rules, writing advisories, writing parsers. That's necessary, but it's not really the best use of our cognitive ability, if you think about it. I think that's one thing AI is going to solve, because people talk about LLMs and using it as a saw. I see it differently. Like, you have a playbook and you can have a playbook in code. Now I can use an LLM to update the playbook rather than me having to write it every time a new advisory comes out. That's already a big deal. So that's one way I think we're going to see AI helping us a lot, just by streamlining all of this manual work.
No, fascinating, and we could talk about this particular aspect for a lot longer, I'm sure. But I want to move on and really focus on the use of AI in security validation, which is something you started to touch upon a little bit earlier, Nerdwan. So security validation, for those that don't know, is an aspect very close to our heart here at Picus. And we believe that validation is really vital or essential to help security teams to measure risk and take action in the areas that will best impact their security programs. And one of the ways that we perform validation at Picus is through attack simulation. So that's simulating cyber threats to help organizations to validate the effectiveness of their defenses and take decisions to optimize them. Very recently, Picus launched Numi AI as the latest addition to the Picus platform, which helps users to validate even more effectively by providing information about their security posture, but also by providing guidance to help ensure that validation is performed in the right areas. Tugral, you've been really fundamental to the development of NUMI by developing sort of the back end engine that powers it. So what more can you tell us about NUMI and in particular the Picus exposure graph that brings it all together?
Well, as you said, NUMI is our virtual analyst for security teams to empower them by quickly accessing critical information about their organization's security posture. The key point is, I think, the critical information about them, about their security posture. Picus is a platform, a complete security validation platform, and there is so much valuable information coming from various components, data sources of this platform. We have to be more specific. Let's talk about our threat library. It's updated immediately against emerging threats. And these threats are enriched with regional and industrial benchmarks, as well as mitigation suggestions. Moreover, we keep track of cyber threat intelligence data and map our threat library with most active threat actors in the field. On the other hand, our customers are running simulation and they get prevention and detection results upon these simulations. And our customers have assets at their site, and all these assets have their own attributes, softwares, vulnerabilities, policies, and there are potential attack paths between these assets. So as you see in our platform, there is a variety of data and so much value. At that point, because exposure graph takes place, we land all this critical information on our exposure graph. And therefore, we see it as the most critical part of NUMI service. And by this way, we actually differentiate NUMI from a general purpose Q&A bot or agent. Because with NUMI, we do not expect NUMI to answer any question about anything. On the other hand, we expect NUMI to create valuable insights with just simple natural language queries. Of course, this data, these results are already located in the platform. We can reach it, but NUMI makes it easier and quicker just by asking natural language questions. So we can easily say that our exposure graph is the main backbone of NUMI service.
Yeah, thank you, Atul. That was a great overview, and I think what you were talking about there is the different types of data used by the exposure graph, from vulnerability management data, simulation data, asset data, etc., and how that we bring that together. What challenges does maintaining that consistent data present when sort of training AI models? And what is Picus's approach to this in particular?
Yeah, as you said, data is coming from various sources in different formats. Integrating this data into a uniform graph or connecting the dots can be challenging, really. Luckily, we are mostly fed by our structured platform data, but on the other hand, we are also using, as I said, cyber threat intelligence data, which requires extracting data from a bit dirty reports or complicated reports, which is mostly unstructured. These are the points that we face and try to solve. Especially while handling this data, also data privacy and governance issues take really critical place, because we are handling sensitive data, and we always try to be sure we are storing this data in secure ways, secure areas, and also just focus on the data that we really need. We try to avoid using sensitive data if not needed for our model. These are the points we focus on, and these are the points that really require a good data engineering skills.
Oliver, how important is it that AI models are trained on up-to-date intelligence for that real-world context?
You know, you hear a lot about LLMs, for example, hallucinating, which, if I'm honest, it's of course positive, right? The tragedy is that the models can't tell you they don't know. One of the main go-to methods of avoiding that is what's called grounding the AI model. And you do that by basically giving it access to your organizational data. So if you were building a customer services bot, that customer services bot would have access to all of your documentation to make sure that it doesn't just make stuff up. And in security, of course, your operational data takes that role. We know that if we're asking about your data, it's not going to have to basically generalize. It can actually look it up. And the knowledge graph is the perfect way for AI to be able to analyze that data because it shows you the relationships, But what I find fascinating about it is that you already hear people talking about what's called a digital twin. So if you go to Dubai or Las Vegas, these smart cities, they're building basically like virtual simulations of all of their connectivity and so on, so to be able to test what happens if you have a traffic jam, if the electric goes out. And of course, if you think of breach and attack simulation, it's a digital twin of your security infrastructure, right? This is like the burgeoning steps that we're seeing there. And of course, at some point, hopefully, it's going to be a very authentic representation of at least the major attributes of your environment to be able to test it. So I think it's crucial to be able to use AI with confidence and to be able to make informed decisions. That's essentially what it brings to the table. Yeah.
Privacy then is clearly a big consideration when thinking about using AI. And this comes up a lot, doesn't it, what can you tell us about how Picus in particular is safeguarding privacy when it comes to sort of the collection and aggregation of data?
Maybe we can think about this question in NUMI case. Simon, if you can show the flow of NUMI.
Yeah, of course.
In NUMI, a user asks a question, and NUMI service takes this question to the LLM to translate this natural language question to a valid query that can be run our Picus exposure graph. When we are sending this question to LLM, actually we do not share the raw data here. We just send the metadata of our exposure graph, the nodes, the relations, definitions. Actually, we try to introduce the data we have to LLM. So this is the critical point. I think we do not share our data or our customers' results to any third party or LLM. On the other hand, we, as I mentioned before, we avoid using sensitive data if it is not needed. So we don't use any data addressing a customer directly on our graph, but we anonymize identifiers for our customers. So if we if we go through the flow, when we get the valid query from LLM, we run it at our exposure graph. The graph returns the result, and we convert this result to a human readable format, again with the help of LLM. And in this flow, as you see, the data stays at our side, and there is no sensitive information available to any other third party.
Nurduan, NUMI is just the latest implementation of generative AI in the Picus platform, isn't it? What can you tell us about how we're using GenAI in other aspects of the platform?
Yeah, actually, with the introduction of NUMI, we continue to use and harness the power of GenAI, which is the foundation of our platform, our Picus platform. We will work on several AI-driven use cases to enhance advanced capabilities to our customers. And this includes identifying AI-based attack scenarios based on exposure paths, enabling automated risk mitigation, remediation, and delivering predictive security analytics. And as you can see, the exciting journey ahead. And we have already matched machine learning techniques with the right problem to make CTI actionable, finding detection posture gaps, and extract attack paths. Together with Numi, we are constantly carrying out innovative R&D projects to solve unique and direct customer problems using the combination of GenAI and ML techniques, and of course, data fabric of our Picus platform.
Thank you. No, it's all really exciting, and clearly the release of Numi is just another important step on that roadmap to enhancing outcomes for our customers by leveraging AI. We're getting close to the end of today's session. So at this point, I will just ask our audience if you do have any questions that you'd like to submit to today's panelists, then please feel free to do so. Nodawan, I know that you have to go very soon, so please feel free to drop off whenever you're ready, and Etul and Oliver and I will can kind of continue the discussions and wrap up.
Okay.
Before you do go, I'm just interested to know about where you see this all going. We've heard a lot in today's discussion about the use of AI and the impact it's having, and indeed how Picus is leveraging AI in security validation. Does AI have the potential, do you think, to replace the need, let's say, for tier 1 analysts in cybersecurity in the next 5 years? Is that something that you see as a next stage? That's to anybody who wants to answer that one.
So,
The guy, you want to go?
Maybe this question is very fantastic for you.
You know, if you follow my newsletter, my focus here is on how quickly something like this actually becomes production grade, because I think people are generally good at seeing what's coming in the future. They're just terrible at predicting how quick it's going to happen. And the hype around GenAI right now, I think, is clouding the fact that we're just at the beginning. There are multiple problems we have to solve: energy, GPUs, data quality, cooling for data centers. These are real problems. We can solve them. They take time. I think it's going to take us between 5 to 10 years before we start seeing, a higher level of automation. What does high level automation mean? Let's say in 5 years' time, you can automate roughly 50% of what a typical security operations team does. I think that's a good kind of announcement, right? In that kind of time. But I think it depends on many, many things. At the same time, in the meantime, I think we're already starting to see the fruit of this. We're starting to see results. My own background in SIM, 80% of what the vendors do is basically just building parsers. That's what we do. We build parsers so that we can get your data and take a look at it. That's solved now with LLM. Right? That means we can move on to getting value out of the data, not trying to get the data into a shape to get value out of it. So I think we're going to start seeing these results very quickly, but I think they're not going to be like, it's just not going to move the needle by massive amount. We're going to see an incremental improvement now in terms of our capabilities. And I do believe for once we're going to get ahead of the attackers. That's my big controversial announcement. I think in 5 years' time, we're going to have a short phase where attackers are going to be like, oh my God. Yeah.
It sounds like a good reason to have you back on a future webinar in a few years' time. We can look back on this conversation and see how things have changed and whether you were
humble
right.
pie. Yeah, eat humble pie.
What's your thoughts on the other one at all?
Now we cannot predict what we will face, but yes, we are human beings and we tend to be predicts with using data and improvements. So yes, we are in SOC teams. We are still discussing the as your question, tier 1 level, questioning this level needs, and to combining with level 1 and level 2. So maybe with the improvements and developments on the AI field, so maybe we can do this in the near future. So exciting developments ahead, I think.
And I know you have to go, but I just want to ask you one very quick question. I know it's something that you were keen to raise during the session. It's just, what advice can you give to security teams that are looking to adopt AI as part of their strategy? Are there any tips that you can share?
As I said before, the adaptation to AI developments has become one of the most important challenges for cybersecurity teams right now. They are already working under a huge operational load. Their responsible technologies are diversifying and changing very fast. The IT infrastructure they are responsible for their security is being more complex. The methods used by adversaries are getting more sophisticated, and now we also expect them to master everything in the AI developments and implement them immediately. I know it's a very cruel world, but this is what it is. But as I said before, the main approach should be designing a program for cybersecurity teams to be an adaptive defense, people, process, and technology. When creating such a program with using this approach, you should start with small steps. I think the main goal should be reducing the manual works and to focus on more valuable tasks. And during this process, teams will experience a mindset conversion, and it is hard. Yes, I know that, but it is important to be patient and consistent there. And AI-based technologies they added to their processes and infrastructure should also support their adaptation period with provided use cases and ease of use functions. We always took these challenges into consideration in our productization process on Picus Numi, and wanted to benefit our customers' adaptation period also. And finally, GenAI is part of the solution, right? It's not a magic to solve all the problems we face. Industry and cybersecurity industry should be very cautious, relying on too much on the GenAI. And we should focus on the using right technique with the right problem and with ML and AI combination and at the right time. And as I believe we did in Picus while developing these solutions to our customers.
Nurdowan, thank you. I think that was a great summary. We've got time for a few questions. There's been a few posed via the chat. I'm going to share one of them on screen now. It's from Andres. And Andres asks, do you anticipate GenAI being employed to simulate cyber attacks to assist businesses in better preparedness? I can take this one if you like. I think at the moment, as you've heard with the release of Numi, Andres, where we're focused at the moment is helping to guide security teams to validate their security against the threats most relevant to them. So one of the ways that we're doing that is using GenAI to aggregate different cyber threat intelligence from different sources and present recommendations based on your threat profile and what threats are you most likely to face, which pose the greatest risk, and therefore which should you simulate. But certainly, our ambitions extend much more than that. And as we develop more use cases around validation, then I think there will definitely be possibilities to start leveraging GenAI to help with the actual simulation as well. Another question, Oliver, maybe you could take this one. Can AI be trusted to make security decisions?
Oh, that depends, doesn't it? Depends on what level of accuracy your decision mechanism has. That's going to vary. If you have a clear indicator of compromise, sure, you can automate it. If that domain is known bad, block it. If you have ambiguous behavior, I think it starts getting a little bit more challenging. And in reality, we're still at the point where we have to keep a human, if not in the loop, at least on the loop. But we're going to see an increasing number of activities which are going to be possible to automate fully autonomously. I think that needle, we're going to move a little bit of things where we can have a higher degree of accuracy to be able to do it, purely because we can mix different modes of AI, different data science approaches to basically increase our level of confidence that what we're seeing is actually something worth acting on. So incremental improvement, but I think it's going to make quite a big difference when you look at things like stopping ransomware early, where we just need to be that little bit quicker.
Tuğrul, what's your view? Can AI be trusted?
From data perspective, I can answer this question. Actually, it depends on your data, your quality of data, how you prepare it, and maybe depending on the question just Nurdan answered a few minutes ago, what should teams do to adapt to the AI technologies especially in defending side? Everybody must be aware of their data. What do they have, and what do they collect, and what are they collecting and they are unaware of. So if we can focus on the details of our data and improve the volume and the quality of our data, both accuracy and the value we generate will be easier. And GenAI solutions or other AI solutions are improving very quickly. The differentiator will be the data, I think.
Great stuff. Well, I think we'll have to leave it there because we're starting to run short of time. The use of AI in security, as we've heard, presents exciting opportunities for defenders to improve the effectiveness of security operations. But we've also heard that it needs to be applied in the right areas and also trained on the right data to be really impactful. If you'd like to learn more about the use of AI in security and indeed across other industries, then I can thoroughly recommend signing up to Oliver's newsletter, the Curious AI newsletter via LinkedIn. And in particular, if you'd like to learn more, particularly about how AI and attack simulation can be leveraged to help validate your security posture more effectively, then please feel reach out to me or another member of the Picus security team. We'd be happy to tell you more and even show you a quick demo. For any existing Picus customers that want to try Numi but haven't yet, there's still time to sign up to our beta program. There's a link I think has been posted in the chat. If you follow that, it'll show you how you can sign up to the program. With that, I just really want to thank Tuğrul, Nurdan, and also Oliver for today's session. I think it's been a really great discussion. I hope everybody has enjoyed it. And a big thank you to everybody for watching. We appreciate you tuning in and staying right until the end.
Bye-bye.